Hey everyone, it's Delilah, the Pastime Cook, and tonight I was going to show y'all one of my favorite little recipe collections ever. And to be honest with you, I have no idea where this came from. My mom got it for me. She found it at a vintage store or a yard sale. She really can't remember because she got it a long time ago. I've never seen another one like it. I'm sure they're out there. It's pretty old. It's from 1913, and it is in amazing condition for its age. But it is from 1913, and it's kind of got a broken hinge here, so I kind of have to be careful with it. But it is a complete collection for a daily recipe guide for every day of the year. Recipe calendars used to be really popular, and I've got a few of them, although this is the most extensive one that I've ever seen. I have several cookbooks that give dinner menu guides, lunch menu guides, ideas on what to make for breakfast, lunch and dinner on all major holidays and just on any given Saturday, that kind of thing. And then I have a couple other ones that give just a recipe guide for most every day of the year, but they're very short and sweet, and they don't give the full recipes. And this one does not give the full recipes either. I'll give you an example. So this is January the 1st, and this is copyright 1913. And so it would give a recommendation for a dinner, and then it would give you one of the recipes. And what's interesting is just because it has, say, crisp crackers on here, that doesn't mean it's going to have a recipe for crisp crackers. Or just because it has, cream of pea soup, it doesn't mean that cream of pea soup is going to be anywhere in here. Although I think the cream of pea soup is, but that's just how the calendar works. So what's really interesting to me, besides just the collection itself, is this was basically written by Fannie Merritt Farmer, and she wrote the Boston Cooking School of Cookbook. Now, Fannie Merritt Farmer would be like today's Martha Stewart. She was incredibly famous for her time, and she was considered not just a good cook, but a food scientist. She was probably one of the first food scientists of her day. And she would actually she wrote a lot of cookbooks, and she would make recommendations for products. And so if you were a food producer of any kind, if you could get Fannie Merritt Farmer to endorse your product, you were probably going to sell a lot of it. But she really did believe in food nutrition. And as I said, she was one of the first of her kind. And in fact, she was so famous that she actually had a series of lectures at Harvard Medical School, which was unheard of at its time. Okay, she was born, I believe, in 1857. She died at the age of 59. She had a permanent limp in one leg, probably due to polio, and she died of a stroke in her 50s. But she contracted probably polio when she was quite young, around 14, 16. Her family, I believe they were Unitarian, and so they believed in women's education. And they didn't have a lot of money. They didn't come from money, but they believed in education, and her sisters were all supposed to go to college. But when she got sick, she wasn't able to go to college. And so that's when she actually developed kind of a hobby and a love of cooking. And she got really good at it, and her mom encouraged her to work with some people, like young women in their homes, helping them cook, things like that. And then she eventually entered into the Boston School of Cooking, which was a very famous school of cooking at the time. And they taught, how to be a good cook, how to cook, recipes, that sort of thing, usually to kind of younger, more affluent women. And so she entered the Boston School of Cooking, and she did really well, and she graduated. And then in 2 years, she actually came back as the director of the Boston School of Cooking. And prior to the very famous Boston School of Cooking cookbook, which is still it's still in print today, probably as the Fannie Merritt Farmer Cookbook, but at the time it had been the Mrs. Lincoln's Boston School of Cooking Cookbook, no kin to Abraham Lincoln, but that was the original cookbook, and then she wrote another one, the Boston School of Cooking Cookbook, and she believed in it so much that she actually put up the money to produce it herself. And the production company that actually produced the book, I don't remember the name, but they didn't think it was going to sell. And so she actually was able to maintain the copyright of that book. And boy, were they surprised, and I'm sure quite sad, when the book sold like wildfire, and she went on to make a lot of money because she was the one who put up the money, and she retained the copyrights to the book. So a few years after that, she actually went out on her own and formed her own cooking school. And like I said, she was incredibly famous and way ahead of her time. She was also known as the mother of the level tablespoon, because prior to her, if you wrote a recipe, you would say something like, butter the size of an egg, or a pinch of salt or whatever. And the story goes that one of her pupils asked her one day, they said, well, what's a pinch? And so that made her decide to come up with like standardized measurements to be used in recipes. Anyhow, she was, like I said, a very incredible woman, considering that, this was the 1890s, early 1900s. And she really did a lot for recipes and cookbooks and that sort of thing. Now, this collection, I have shown pictures of them before. I'm going to restart it because I've had several people ask about it, and I have a lot of new followers and they haven't seen it, and I think it's really, really cool. So today is September 23rd, so we'll go back here to September 23rd. There it is. And so the recipe for the day was fricassee of lamb, browned sweet potatoes, grapefruit salad, baked Indian pudding with cream, scalloped corn, and wheat Krispies, and cafe noir, which is a fancy way of saying black coffee. So here's the recipe for the brown sweet potatoes, and I'll start posting these every day again. I haven't done that in about a year, but like I said, it's very interesting, and I've got quite a few new followers that I think would enjoy seeing this. So for those of y'all that it's a repeat, I apologize. If you weren't able to screenshot some of them, here's another opportunity to do so. So anyhow, hope y'all are all having a great night, and thanks for listening. If you've made it this far, thanks for listening to all of this information.